I'm Rasul Berry, and welcome to Where You're From. And today we have an incredible special guest, Maya Moore Irons, basketball Hall of Famer, legend, social activist, and somebody who has an incredible story of faith. So let's get into it. Maya Moore, where you from?
Where am I from? Goodness, I have several places that I'm from. I was born in Missouri, middle of the state, middle of the country. Not the easiest place to get to is the capital, Jefferson City, Missouri. And then I also lived in Charlotte, North Carolina for 1 year in middle school. And then I spent the rest of my growing up in Metro Atlanta in Gwinnett County.
Okay, so let's rewind, go back to Jefferson City, the capital. Like, what was it like growing up there? What was the family situation like? Kind of give us a picture of what your experiences was in your early years in Jefferson City.
Yeah. So my mom, it starts with my mom. She raised me as a single parent. She was born and raised in Southside Chicago to two awesome parents. My grandparents that I love so much, they're both educators. But my mom, when she was 18, wanted to kind of spread her wings, and she ended up going to college out in Los Angeles. And so went to school, started working out there, ends up pregnant with me at the age of 31. And it's not something she's expecting, but my family and some roommates at the time just wrapped their arms around her and encouraged her to raise me around family. And so she did. And at the time, the family that my mom was closest to growing up moved from Chicago to Missouri back when they were young. And so they were raising their family in Missouri. So she moved to Missouri to raise me around that family. And so that became my people. That's who I grew up with. My great uncle was kind of the head of the clan. And he is a music director, music teacher. That's what brought him to Missouri, to be a music teacher at the college level. So I grew up with a lot of love for learning, a lot of music, a lot of Sunday dinners. But I also grew up in a small town that there weren't a whole lot of Black people.
Okay.
And so we were, like a typical situation, a minority, but also we were a middle class Black family that did have the benefit of education, did have the benefit of family connection and marriages that were growing and thriving in a lot of senses.
Yeah, and it seems like, just you've already mentioned grandparents, aunts, uncles. So you had a pretty big family. What about peers? Because you were the only child that your mother had. Were there other kids around in the family?
So I was the oldest cousin. Okay. So I started the thing out. I had to set that bar real high. I was the original OG cousin in the Missouri clan. And so every year, a new cousin was getting popped out. So it was super fun for me because I love babies. Even when I was a kid, I loved babies.
Right.
And so when a new baby came, I was all about it. I was at a young age kind of more responsibility minded because I was the older cousin.
Okay.
But I also love to have fun. I love to bring people together. After school, my mom was still working, so I was a latchkey kid. And I try to do whatever homework I had or eat some snack, and I'd go knock on everybody's door. Knock, 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 knock. Is Ryan home? Knock, 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 knock. Is John home? Knock, knock, knock. Is Abby home?
When did hoops?
When did the hoop?
Or to quote, a famous clip from a movie that you like. When did you fall in love with basketball? I'm merging two different Sanaa Lathan movies together, right? But in any case, the hoop. Tell us about the hoop.
But when I was little, my mom put a hoop up on the back of the door in our apartment. Like, this was the small 2-bedroom apartment. And there was this long hallway. And I would just run up and down that hallway because I was a super active kid. God bless my mom. She was just trying to cook dinner or do some laundry. And she's like, here, do this. So do this became more than what we expected in the future. But
basketball, do this. Just you busy. You know.
Girl, do something.
Okay.
Something organized. She was really good at trying to get me involved in something structured. So my energy had something to channel towards. So basketball fit my personality really well. And then when I was 7, I played in the YMCA league where we didn't know nothing and shooting air balls. And I scored a few buckets because I was probably the only one that could really score. Taller than most kids most of my life. But then I started playing AAU basketball when I was 8 at the one team that was available in Jefferson City. It was the 10 and under team. And they let me play at 8 years old. And so I actually wasn't the tallest the whole time because I played up for the rest of the time of my AAU career. And I ended up playing 9 seasons of AAU before I went to Yukon.
So when did this legendary competitive streak emerge in you where you realize, I don't know, either I really love to win or I really hate to lose?
Yeah. Gosh, now that I'm older and looking back at myself and kind of understanding more of how I work and what motivates me, I definitely think I was more driven and still am more driven by like accomplishing or achieving the thing as opposed to beating you.
Got it.
So I wasn't out here like talking trash and like, I gotta beat you. It was more like I want to get it right. I want to get it right.
So it was about excellence and about getting the job done. And I mean, AAU is not like a small thing for a single mom to commit to. Tell us a little bit about that and the role of investment that your mom and your family had in these aspirations of yours.
Man, I wouldn't be talking to you right now if I didn't have the family that I have. Starting with my mom, she was so committed to being present for me when she could, at all the practices and the games that she could, just to be a part of my life. So showing up is a big lesson that I learned from her. And then when I was in middle school, her realizing we needed to kind of go beyond Jefferson City for more opportunities for her to work and for me to play basketball. And so that's how we landed in Charlotte and then eventually in Metro Atlanta. And then after I moved, my extended family that were heartbroken when we moved said, all right, we're just going to get in the car. We're going to, if you have a, tournament outside of Georgia or in Georgia, we'll come when we can. And that support, that long distance love, that box of cookies my godmom would mail me in the Tupperware so that it stayed fresh with the paper towel in there. Like all the things to just make me feel loved no matter where I was. And
okay, so let's kind of rewind to the move in Charlotte because this is kind of a big deal. You, the big cousin, right? You the one that held all the babies, and you loved that. And so, what was it like for you to move away, and how did you see new opportunities emerge in this new environment?
Yeah, moving away was so pivotal, and I don't think my mom and I could really wrap our minds around at the time how much that would impact the rest of our life. I think on one hand, just relational, like not living proximate to our family was hard and huge and painful, but it ended up creating like a desert-like experience for my mom and I to really think about our faith, because our extended family, we were close to them. We went to church. That's just kind of, what we did. And so many of them living it out and trying to authentically walk with Jesus. But then when we were in our desert time, it's like, all right, Mom, are we going to keep doing this? Are we going to try to find a church? Are we going to try to stay with this? And we said, yeah. And so we got to kind of test ourselves, and the Lord getting to test us, to see us, to know what's in us. And we said, we want you, Lord, and tried to find churches and tried to figure out who the Lord was to me in my lonely times, because it was lonely. Middle school is hard enough.
Who you telling? I mean, we got to do something about 6th, 7th, 8th grade.
I'm open for ideas because eventually our little guy is going to be in middle school.
Yes.
I'm nervous.
The struggle is real. The struggle is real. But, you talked about, this desert period that really became an incubator for your faith. Tell us about that, like, a moment where your faith became like real, because it's such a big part of what you do and who you are.
I can think of a couple of times. I think there was one church. There was kind of 2 churches we were going back and forth to when we were in Charlotte, because one church, my mom I liked it too, but they were more like old school, like traditional Black church, choir, singing, robes, the vibe was just great. And then there was this other church that was more like, open your Bible, get out your pen and paper. We're about to dig into this thing. And that just brought me alive. Just the way I'm wired, I'm a learner.
Yeah.
I love to just think. I love to dig in. And the pastor just had a way of teaching that just made me fall in love with God's word. but then that kind of the joy and the communal aspect of the other church. It was just a cool time to kind of experience the diversity of God's people still within the Black church.
Yep.
And a chance for me to really, even the next year when we moved to Georgia, just continuing to see God as my father through another church that we ended up in Metro Atlanta, just that relational aspect of, oh no, he's my father. Like growing up without a father, finding a lot of security and identity, I think, found in me being God's daughter.
Yeah.
And that relationship that he points us to.
And I love how you also talk about this journey that you and your mom went on together. And there's a moment in your book, Love and Justice, where you talk about how she explained to you the circumstances of the move to Atlanta, which weren't the best, which I just thought said so much about your relationship. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that, because that's actually the second story that I was going to say. It was like the first story was this church experience of falling in love with God's word. But then the second experience I'd point to in middle school was like literally being so lonely and the new kid and trying to figure out who I was. It being a really hard time too, because 2 weeks after we moved to Charlotte, my mom lost her job.
Wow.
There's a bunch of layoffs going on at the company she was working at, and she gets a promotion. We moved to Charlotte, and just kidding.
Wow.
We're laying you off. So that was hard. But my mom was resilient. She found temp work. She did what she had to do and worked nights for a little while. My grandmother flew in from Chicago and was with me for a little bit during that transition until she found something more stable through a connection with my AAU team at the time. One of the family members actually connected her with a job at IBM and then at a bank later. So, we were making it. We were still kind of in that middle class place, getting support from my grandparents every now and again when expenses got high.
Yeah.
And I don't think I knew that, but my grandparents and my uncle were helping us.
Yeah, just that support,
afar.
that network.
That network, of family and basketball family. And we didn't necessarily get tied in long enough in Charlotte to have a connection with the church family.
Right.
But we were struggling, and God became real to me in that time of like, no, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
He's with me, and I know who I am in him.
How did you feel about the move to Atlanta, and what was its immediate impact on you?
I know my mom did such a great job of painting the picture of like, this is hard, but this is going to be good. And there's opportunity. Like we're going to have family. There's a great high school and basketball teams down there. And I was like, sign me up. Our team in Charlotte was great, but we should have ended up in Atlanta anyway. That was the original kind of goal. But so it was hard because I was making friends and kind of starting to get a groove.
Yeah.
And there was still like a couple games left in our basketball season. And they were like, what, you're leaving? So it was hard. And then coming in halfway through 7th grade to a new middle school that was not as cool as my other middle school. But once basketball season started, the next year it was better.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the basketball front, right? Because especially in high school, it starts to kind of pick up and become a thing. When did you know, like, I'm really good at this?
I never did, and I did at the same time. Like, my experience in basketball, whether it was because, it was the women's game to where you're not getting all the hype at the point yet in the history of the development of the women's game, or just the way our coaches cultivated the team culture of just being down to earth and connected. I had great coaches and great teams. And also just, I think just the way I was raised to just not think too highly of yourself. You've been given a lot of opportunity, and again, it wasn't about necessarily beating you. It was like, let's go out here and have fun. Now, I hated losing. I hated like tears, all the things when we would lose. And I had to learn and grow how to manage my emotions as someone who is a high achiever and not doing the thing. So great lessons that I learned. But in 6th grade, my mom encouraged me to send out resumes to colleges. Like, let's work on this early. Like, this is your dream.
Send out resumes.
Let's start a little resume.
College in 6th grade.
Single black woman, having to get jobs, find. She knew how to Like you got to go out and
so you would mail
look.
this because this this is before we were doing
Sixth
Google
grade.
Drives.
Hi, my name's Maya. My favorite color. My grades are. I like to do. Thank you. Have a nice day. Just basic.
Did they ever respond?
I honestly don't remember about the middle school ones, but by the time I was like in 7th grade, schools were like,
wow,
interested. We would go to certain campuses and do their summer camps
Uh-huh.
and play certain tournaments that they would host. And I remember going on my first visit with some of my teammates at that college at the time and getting a tour and being like, oh, this is fun. This is exciting. Like this
Right.
could happen. This is the dream. My mom was just like, the dream is to play in college, get a scholarship.
Okay.
And let's make sure we're making choices that put us in position to make that happen and to see what happened. And we stayed the course, got connected with good teams, and opportunities kept opening because of people and women who've come before to make those opportunities happen. By the time I was in 9th grade, I'd been a part of a national championship team and was being very highly recruited.
Got it. National championship team
in AAU.
AAU. Okay, so tell us about you're starting to experience high stakes basketball and sports in high school for the first time. Like, what was that like?
Yeah. So the summer before my 9th grade year, we became national champions. And the summer before that, we were runners up. So I would say in middle school, the high stakes experiences started because you have national championship tournaments from 10 years old all the way up to 16. And so I went to nationals almost every year that I played, but we didn't start getting highly ranked until Charlotte, I think. So I went to Georgia. We got runners up that first year. The next year we won. Start my freshman year, switch teams, start going to Nike All-American camps. We win the state, we lose the state championship my freshman year, and then we go on to win the next 3. And so our team is, USA Today #1. I'm getting All-American stuff. Naismith Awards are starting to come.
I mean, that's an incredible run. So what do you remember? Was there something about the experience of being runner-up, right, and losing the last game of the season that inspired you and your teammates to go on this epic run in high school of 3 state champions?
Of course not. I'm pretty sure my cousin said, I looked him in the face and said, this will never happen again. Like, so dramatic. And then it didn't.
But it didn't know. But he didn't know.
I was so shook up.
And I think part of that is what makes a champion. Yeah. So what did it feel like to follow up that first loss, as a freshman, as a sophomore, and win it all?
It's very gratifying to bounce back. And also just to be in a position to have other talented players around you to make that a possibility again. And I didn't have to recreate the wheel. Like she knew the wheel and she helped us.
Right.
And then other players, we had a couple players move in, which helped to the region to play for us and kept us competitive for the rest of those years. But just maintaining excellence, not getting complacent, because you can get complacent too with like we made it to the state championship, but it takes time. You have to sit in it in the spring of the defeat. You got to work through the summer. You got to prep right and start a new year in the fall, and then you do your thing in the winter. You grind. You do the holiday tournaments, and then February in high school, I think, are state championship times. It's one and done. Like you don't get a playoff series. It's so nerve-wracking. These poor parents. Yes.
Yeah. So tell us about that moment of, you play at a time, or you're going into college at a time where there's several legendary coaches and that have interest in you. What was that like being recruited at the highest levels and having to make that decision of where you were going to go? Yeah,
it was really an opportunity for me to grow up because I was living always beyond my years of like, you're a 14-year-old being recruited by the business of basketball, like the college game is a business. Yeah. But at that time, and as we're seeing now, like, what does it look like for this to be a business, but also still try to protect like the youth of it? Yeah. I still feel like my recruiting process was very relational. I kind of knew, and it helped that I knew like these are my top 4. I'm not going to waste anybody else's time. Right. I want it to be respectful, because I had a lot of respect for these coaches and these programs, and then it came down to Yukon and Tennessee, and so
two of the
most legendary, impactful. But it was clear to me after I visited Yukon, and you do the whole weekend, and they're taking you around and showing you stuff, but at the same time, in the culture of Yukon, they're like, we're not kissing up to you. Like, this is what it is. If you want to come here, kind of a thing. And it's like I appreciated that aspect of Gino's personality, and but at the same time, like, I watched them practice, and I said, oh man, that looks hard and really good. Like, I wanted to be a part of that. I was like, this is what is gonna. I want to be a part of this.
And I just got to say here, like, that's that thing that's different and special inside of certain types of people that look at the hard practice and go, that's where I need to be to maximize who I am. Because that's not everybody.
Yeah.
Some other people will be like, practice? You know what I mean?
I know.
But
that's how you know that's not your calling. Yeah. I wanted to be a part of something that I knew would challenge me and make me better. And I could bring, what I have to help. Now,
this level of focus, because even when we look back and you talk about how early you kind of latched onto this, I mean, sending resumes in sixth grade, like, when did you realize, like, I am a uniquely focused individual? Like,
I don't know if it was so much me realizing my uniqueness as much as, I'm a middle school, high school kid, and I'm like, don't like the things y'all like, or what y'all are into, I'm not into. Right. And I just learned to be okay by myself. Like, at that point, I had God in my life. And so my journey in high school was really a lot of, all right, God, it's going to be me and you. Right. And I'm okay with that, because I had my desert foundation. Which I look back and it's like, oh, thank God for that desert foundation.
Isn't that amazing, where we can look back on the hard and actually be grateful for it because it put in us that which we would need, in life. Okay, so you get to Yukon. Yeah. What wouldn't have been the last championship before you got there?
Yeah, so they were just ending the Diana Taurasi era.
Okay.
So a lot of pressure, right? Yeah. They're not doing as well as they would have liked to. My freshman year, they had not been to a Final Four in almost a whole class. And so there was a lot of pressure on us to get back to the Final Four. Right. Going into Yukon my freshman year, I had friends in high school, but I also was still seeking that, like, community with other believers. And when you're on the higher sports kind of pro track, you're not necessarily surrounded by people who love Jesus. Great people, but not necessarily with the focus of walking intimately with Christ. And so there was still that element of loneliness that I had with me, and not necessarily knowing how to connect to people who didn't necessarily see the same way as I did. Yeah. So developing this love for Jesus, developing this side of, like, God is my Father, this identity, but growing in my craft, but still learning how to connect with people. But I also prayed to the Lord. I was like, God, I need friends. Like, I'm starting this new journey all the way in the north, right? I'm coming from Georgia, going to the New England area, just north of New York, up in Connecticut. And I need friends. I mean, I'm going to have my teammates, but I want to have more of that. However I articulated it in my 18-year-old self. And the Lord provided through a Christian sports organization that had a handful of people trying to gather and play sports and follow Jesus. So that was a huge blessing for me, on top of just having awesome teammates and just getting established in the Yukon culture my freshman year.
Wow. Freshman year, usually, especially at a program like this, you're kind of able to gradually get into the flow of things, right? You know, they're not expecting too much of you. Like you said, we were Yukon before you got here. So I'm sure that was the same with you.
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. So this isn't the first time they've had highly touted freshmen, like you're saying.
Right.
So I actually came off the bench for the first part of the season, and I liked it. Like, I liked, like, we're living in reality. I'm not getting something before I'm ready. Like, I'm coming off the bench because there's All-Americans and great players here that have earned this spot more than I have. So I wasn't mad at it, but it also kept me hungry. So I got my chances to play. That's all I wanted, was to play. Yeah. And so it was good. And then due to injury, unfortunately, there was a sophomore at the time, tore ACL, and then that pushed me into the starting lineup for the rest of the season. And I just continued to do well and be a great contributor to the team, and either the leading scorer or one of the leading scorers. And just people losing their minds because this freshman, and I was doing a lot of great things. I ended up getting Big East Player of the Year as a freshman.
Wow.
Which was not normal and did not make other people very happy who were upperclassmen at other schools. But I was able to do that with, staying healthy, and my teammates setting me up well, and I try to do the same for them, and Gino coaching us well, and our assistant coaches. But we ended up making it to the Final Four. And we were, I don't know if we were number one or not. Ended up losing in the semifinal to Stanford, who was really hot at the time. And then Tennessee ended up winning, beating Stanford my freshman year.
Got you. So again, kind of a little bit of a parallel that I'm seeing from high school.
Freshman year is rough.
But if this is anything like high school, then there's something else coming too, right?
Something was brewing. This will never happen. And it didn't for another 90 games.
Wow. Now, this is the part of the story that gets kind of crazy. Like, up to this point, it's like, okay, this is really nice and very encouraging and, groundbreaking. Tell us about the streak.
It's kind of crazy when you don't lose for 2.5 seasons. It was nutty because it hadn't been done before. The team that had done it before was one of John Wooden's teams back in the day.
Yeah, 70s.
So it's just not something you plan for. It's just the stars aligned. Literally, all of us stars. We got on the same page and played so great together. Coach was less stressed. Practices were shorter because we just got it. Like, we were motivated. We were in sync. And a lot of us were even doing Bible studies together. It was really cool. I was starting to learn how to be a better leader at connecting with my teammates off the court a little bit better. And I was growing, like we were growing. Again, just getting great talent coming in. And then my teammate, Tina Charles, who was MVP of the WNBA, a fellow Olympian, she decides to become Tina that next year and just totally dominated her position. And, her and I were getting National Player of the Year award
consideration at the same time. Two teammates.
So 2 teammates, 2 future Olympians coming alive at the same time.
Wow.
On top of having Renee Montgomery as our point guard in her senior year. So we knew from preseason it was going to be special. And my sophomore year, no team came within 10 points of us.
Oh, my gosh.
We won every game by 10 points or more, including the NCAA tournament and national championship game. It was crazy.
Wow.
In St. Louis. Won the Final Four.
So you get to do it in front of your family.
It was so sweet.
Oh, man. That's amazing. So that was an undefeated season, which is special, but has been done before, right?
Yeah.
So at what point do people start going, wait a minute, we're starting to get into like rarefied air, something that's never happened before.
I think midway through the next year, and it's like, 50 games and 60 games, and the stress is starting to pick up, more press, more talk, more pressure, more, could this end the streak? And, but it's just, it becomes more of a grind. The pressure we put on ourselves too, of like, we want to be great and do this for each other. And, but it's still another good year and we're cruising and we win again in, I think this was in San Antonio on the Riverwalk, got our second undefeated season, and our national championship game that year was against Stanford. So it's like, ooh, a little taste of
the team that had beat you in the semi.
Holy revenge. This isn't, there's some way to make revenge a good thing, right? Yeah.
Yes. Excellence about the task
we won't
of not
use that
losing.
Word. Revenge is not the right word.
Right.
But it was an opportunity
to
play another good Stanford team, and they were all over us. It was the craziest national championship game I've ever been a part of in that we were stinking up the place offensively. Oh, it was so bad. We went into the locker room, and Stanford was struggling too. We went into the locker room. The score was 20-12
At halftime.
at halftime.
That's low.
12 points for the streak team. We were struggling.
Right.
But we stayed together, didn't panic, but we had to have a little more urgency and focus, and just stuck with it. At one point in the second half toward the end, I hit a step back three to give us our first lead, since early on, and we ended up scoring the most points ever scored in a half, the second half. So the first one, we set a record for least points scored with 12.
Right.
Second half, we set a record for most points in a national championship game in a half, and I think it was like 46 points.
Now, this is one of those times, right, where I'm curious about what's going on in that locker room during halftime.
I know.
Like,
I blacked out. I don't remember.
Like what Coach A said?
It wasn't crazy.
Right.
It wasn't crazy.
Yeah.
Which was good. We literally did what we always do at halftime. Like, it's just don't panic, stay together. Coach telling us what we need to hear. Let's go out and do it.
Wow. And then you went out and did it.
Yeah. Like, we didn't panic.
Okay. So job done, redemption. We'll use another R word.
There we go. That's a better word.
Redemption experienced at the championship level. And so then it keeps going, though.
Right. Oh, we're not done. I mean, there's a sense of relief, 2 undefeated seasons, we did this, sending off Tina and our seniors the way we want to. Right. And then it's like, okay, next year I'm a senior, and welcome. Half your team are freshmen.
Wow.
Because we lost all those seniors. Yeah. And my class is only 2 players. So I'm like, all right, we're going to be okay, right? We have a lot of freshmen. And so we had to rely on half of our starters being freshmen. So that season was very stressful, very rough. We had a player transfer in the middle of the season. It was just, you're having to rebuild and reteach. This is what our culture is to half of the team.
Wow.
And so it was just a lot of work. I grew and struggled a lot of just learning how to be a different type of leader to where I came in and I had a lot of help in the beginning. And now it's like, okay,
now it's your team.
Now I have to change how I lead and also perform more and pick up more slack. And so, not the most ideal way if you're carrying a lot of the load, but those young players got such great experience. And, I got to leave something with them, and they ended up winning their senior year.
But not to just jump past, like spoiler. You're talking about this year as if like one would think with 2 seniors and then who've been there before and a bunch of freshmen that wasn't, that the streak would have ended maybe the first game.
That's true. Thank you.
Or the first time y'all experienced.
I appreciate that. You're right.
Like
we did great. We did great.
how many games did y'all win straight in your seniors year?
So we ended up having a phenomenal year. Like, we played really well, but also, again, just behind the scenes, the work that it takes for what y'all see. It's a grind, it's work, and it doesn't just happen. Like, you have to create it and cultivate it. And so we get about 12 games in, so about halfway through the season, and we lose at Stanford. And they played great. They were just physical with us, just made things hard for us. And we lost. And that was hard. It was just like, what just happened? And just me being like the older cousin, the big cousin.
There it is.
Super responsible. And just, I probably ended up taking more on myself than was healthy. At the time. But also the coaches did the best job they could to guide us through that and to just help us to remember the main things and just the family feel that we always had going through and just the way the coaches let us lead the team. That's one of the things I think that makes Yukon different, and probably why they recruit players like me who are like, I want that. Right. Is they make the team ours. Like, if y'all don't do it, this is about y'all. Like, we've won champions. Like, we're good. Right. If something's going to happen, it's because you guys do it. And taking that kind of ownership and responsibility for the team, and so that the coaches aren't trying to pull stuff out of you. Right. It's like, no, we bring it, and they just set us up for success.
Now, with all of this, attention and, breaking the record for the longest winning streak in college basketball history, there comes fanfare with that. And there comes autograph requests. At what point did you start to sign with a certain nod to a Bible verse?
Yeah. So when I was a senior in high school, I had a friend who was an All-American. So, like McDonald's All-American game, and you do that in the spring. Super fun. And I saw her do it. And she wrote a verse. It said, I think it said COL 3:23. And I was like, what's that? Because not many of us, I don't think, know about the book of Colossians. It's a small little book. It's a funny name.
Yeah.
We know Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but I don't think I'd heard
It's a banger, though.
It is a banger. Colossians is good. And so she said it was Colossians 3:23, and I had no idea what that verse was or what that book was. And I looked it up, and it basically, in everything that you do it as unto the Lord and not for men, because the Lord is going to give you your reward. And so it's just like I connected with it of like, no matter who's watching, I'm going to do this well because I'm alive and I'm breathing and I've been given a gift to give to the world. So super inspiring. So I just put it next to my autograph. My number changed from 32 in high school to 23 in college. Yeah.
But that verse is such a picture of you, I think, because that sense of focus, whatever you do, work heartily, right? And that's that practice. That's that fascination and commitment to the process, right? But the other thing that, is happening during the streak that unbeknownst, like I remember the streak. I remember following it. I remember the disappointment of seeing it in, but also the pride of seeing the fact that it happened. Yeah. But I didn't know that there was a whole other court that you were also finding out about, that and battling about and seeing, some losses, with. Tell us about that and your first introduction into this whole world of, criminal justice.
Yeah, man, that was an unexpected story that started. So as we talked about when I was growing up in Missouri, my great uncle and all his kids, my extended family is who I grew up with. Just awesome people, down to earth, got their struggles, but we're going to love you hard. And so my great uncle had been doing prison ministry for a long, long time. I had no idea growing up that he was doing prison ministry. I don't know how I missed that, but I did.
Yeah.
He'd been doing prison ministry, just going in, ministering to the guys, leading a choir program for the guys at the Missouri State Penitentiary. Rough place. Oldest prison west of the Mississippi. Dangerous history of violence place. But Papa went in there and just tried to bring his light and pour into those guys and teach them. And so my great uncle, we call him Papa. So Papa is going into the Missouri State Penitentiary, doing his thing with the choir and the guys, trying to show up for them, and gets connected with a young man named Johnathan Irons. And so Johnathan is about 19 years old at the time. This is in the late 90s, maybe 1999, 2000, somewhere in there. And just sees something in Johnathan and challenges him to like be a leader and teaches him like, you can sing, and like teaches him to sing. And Johnathan is in this choir program and just attracted to Papa for the right reasons. Like, this is a man who is encouraging me because I'm smart and I'm good at good things, not encouraging me because I can go sell this, marijuana or do this, run this game and use my smarts for that. But he's encouraging me to like lead and do positive things. And so Papa, is just taking Johnathan under his wing. Johnathan is pursuing Papa, and they become like father and son just over time. And Papa learns about Johnathan's case because Johnathan gets encouraged to learn law because no one was going to fight for him if he didn't fight for himself, kind of a thing. It's like, go to this law library and help yourself, young man. And he took that wisdom. And so at that time, he was able to kind of start to articulate to Papa what happened to him. And then Papa was, as any, I think, regular person would respond like, oh my God, this is not okay.
Right.
And ends up sharing it with his family. And so his eldest child is Sherry, big sister to three brothers. Sherry and she marries Reggie, and Sherry and Reggie are my godparents. So my mom's cousin, like a sister, are my godparents. So Sherry and Reggie get a hold of Johnathan's story and are like, what is happening? This can't be real. Like, we got to do something. And so ends up writing a letter. Sherry writes a letter to Johnathan. He responds, and then they eventually go see him and meet him and are just even more moved of like, we got to do something. Reggie comes from an insurance background, so he's uber research, like looking into things and just, hunting down the facts.
Right.
And so Reggie takes that gift that he has and just starts looking at Jonathan's case. Sherry's looking at the case. Johnathan is like slowly opening up to them to like let them into his heart, because most of the time people are going to come and go or just drift off because he's in the belly of the beast. And so this is happening my sophomore year, my junior year. I start to hear bits and pieces of Jonathan's story, and I'm like, oh, this is horrible. I'm going to pray for that man. Like, all I can do is just pray and try to keep me updated on his case. But then when I was 18, about to go off to Yukon, I go back to Missouri to visit my family. And as was their custom for a couple of years, they were going to go see Johnathan every weekend for 15 years. If they were in town, which was most of the time, they were going to go see Johnathan on the weekend during visiting hours. And so they were going to go see Johnathan. So they let me know ahead of time, hey, do you want to come meet Johnathan? Because we're going. So while you're here visiting. And I said, yeah, I want to meet him. And I'd never been to a prison. I didn't even know there was a prison in Jefferson City. At that time, they moved to the Jefferson City Correctional Center, which was a more updated version of the Missouri State Penitentiary that got shut down in 2004. So Johnathan was at JCCC. And I went to the prison with my godparents. So they gave me some sense of like comfort, because I wasn't just going by myself, but it was also just a scary, like doors clanging and barbed wire and show me your ID and police and COs. And it's very unsettling. But at the same time, when I met Johnathan, there was just this peace that we had when we were sitting across from each other. There's a little rectangular table with these plastic chairs. It's not, the most comfortable, but we were just there and just present with each other. And I look at him and I'm genuinely interested in hearing about his life and meeting him, and just, I'm encouraged by his story. Like, he has been through hell and is somehow alive in this place of death. And
you could sense.
And I could see it. Even at 18, I just had a sense of like, you're for real. Like, wow. You're for real. You're a for real person, like trying to live, even though your circumstances are horrible. So my eyes were open at that point. At that point, but also the years before, as I was learning more about the facts of his case and how he got there, I was just like, how is this real? Like, wow. I thought if you were in prison, like,
so because of how close you were with Reggie and Sherry, even like before 18, like you were saying, you were a sophomore, junior in high school, and you're hearing about the story before you actually see him. And then it seems like everything that you saw confirmed and even deepened the sense of injustice that was real in his story.
Yeah, it was a very jolting experience of like, one reality is like Johnathan and this person that has dignity and value and is trying to live and do good. But then the jolting part was like, oh, now the visit's over. We have to leave him here. And I never got used to that. That was the worst feeling of watching him go back and then learning more of the details of all he has to go through before he can even get to the visiting room, of being searched and patted and stripped. And it's just like, how is this wonderful person having to go back to this?
Not only does he have to go back to a cell, but you also go back to all of what you're doing in life with that exposure and that experience. But then you also have this job to do and these goals. And so that is an incredible contrast.
Yeah. And I lived a life on top of the ocean.
Yeah.
And then there was all this stuff happening under the ocean of my life that was just profound. And I was blessed to be able to walk with Johnathan. Like, we just became friends.
Yeah.
Like, he asked if he could keep in touch with me and call every now and again. he's like, I know you're busy. You're going to be doing your thing at UConn, but I just, if I can call you every now and again. I was like, yeah.
And then you go back. So you finish your senior year, and what's next?
Yeah. So senior year, have all this hard and great experience from college. I'm still walking with Johnathan. After my senior year, we lose in the Final Four again. So the beginning and the end of my college career, heartbreaking loss in the Final Four. But then my pro career is about to start, and I, same day call the agent I knew I wanted and said, all right, let's do this. And they're happy. Great, we're going to take good care of you. And I'm like, okay, bye. Because I'm all salty from losing. The agency still takes care of me today. They were actually really pivotal in helping campaign for Johnathan. But get drafted number 1 to the Minnesota Lynx. And they were just, I think, an injury away from just being great, like Simone Augustus. Lindsay Whalen comes to the team the year before. Taj McWilliams-Franklin comes that year. Rebecca Brunson comes that year. Rebecca Brunson has the most rings of anybody ever in WNBA history. Wow. So low-key, like, just doesn't necessarily get the attention she deserved, but she was championship material every day of her life. So I get to join that crew. So they're all 4 captains, and then this rookie comes in. So again, just grateful to the Lord to allow me to come into that, to where I didn't have to carry too much. I could really just be, the come off the bench Maya, like at UConn, of like learning from great players and not having to carry too much, and not having to take the toughest defensive assignment because Simone was going to take it for me because I wasn't ready yet, and just got to learn and grow, and we have a great year, and going from getting the number 1 draft team. One of the worst teams.
Right.
And then we win the WNBA championship my rookie year in Atlanta.
So you finally break the curse, the streak, right? High school, runner-up. Yep. College freshman.
That's true.
Runner-up. Pro.
Let's go.
First year.
Thank
bam.
You for that.
Oh, yeah. We gotta,
Thank
there it is. You did it.
I appreciate that perspective. I will sleep better tonight with that perspective.
Yes. So it's just elevation.
That's right.
Amazing. So, wow. Year 1. WNBA champ. Now, when do you start playing overseas too?
So the life of the WNBA player is double hard because the marketplace over in Europe or other countries is much more lucrative for us than it is in the U.S. at the time, and it's changing. But at that time, it wasn't the reality for me coming in 2011. So. Most of the year, you're actually playing overseas in EuroLeague. At that time, the Chinese market was opening up, so they have a 12-team league over there, and it's shorter than the European League. So it's like prime season to try to play for, but there's only 11 spots because one of those Chinese teams is an all-Chinese team, and then we win 3 years in a row. So wasn't my favorite experience. Right. Loved my teammates. Yeah. We had foreign coaches from Spain, which was great. But, not the greatest basketball experience. But bills got paid. Bills got paid.
So while you're winning championships with the Lynx, winning MVP, winning another championship, how many championships did you win with the Lynx?
I was able to be a part of 4 championships in 8 years. Wow. 6 finals in 8 years.
Amazing. I mean, what a run. Right. Yeah. That's every other year you was, hoisting up the trophy.
A couple of world championships, a couple of gold medals in the Olympics, 3 WCBA titles in China, and 2 EuroLeague.
Right.
One my first year, one my last year. So my schedule was insane.
But you were doing the thing.
I was doing it. I managed to stay healthy through most of that and put my shoes on the court and play.
What they call you, the what queen?
The undefeated queen.
The undefeated queen.
I don't know what that translated in Mandarin, but...
I love that, the undefeated queen. But while you're experiencing that, you're also carrying with you the burden of Johnathan's story and case. And doing this and having 2 different, doing this in a very compartmentalized, private way. This is a story of your family, of a person that you've grown to care about. At what point do you decide, okay, it's time to change the focus that I've had since 6 grade writing resumes to schools with this dream of doing this at this highest level possible to focusing on a different court.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I could be funny and say, you got to get the book. No, but truly get the book.
Yeah.
We can go into so much more depth of that journey for me. Because it's a long journey, right? It's over years. Like we have a 300-page book, but it was over decades.
So we, get the book. That will give you all the context. But I guess to put it differently, you're at the height of your powers, at the height of your, professional athletic career. At what point do you decide, okay, it's time to put this aside to focus? To put it differently, like when's that moment where you maybe decide, okay, I'm gonna write this letter and I'm gonna put this on pause, and then I'm going to focus on this.
Yeah. So, I'd say there was a time in the 2018 season. That was my last season of playing professional. Where I realized I got to stop doing. I have to stop. So, what is being required of me and the way that I'm wired to like Colossians 3:23 everything? I can't keep Colossians 3:23 in this way if I'm going to keep moving forward with what I'm feeling called to as a person in another part of my life. So there's this whole, part of me walking away was for me. Part of it was pursuing Johnathan's freedom. There were things I was wrestling with in my mental health of just needing more rest, needing more Sabbath, needing more space to cultivate different parts of myself in my community that was going to require me to put basketball down in order for me to engage in some other work that you just got to invest in and heal and grow and cultivate in getting some different rhythms of life. I have a big heart to see healing. I have a big heart to see communities and families thrive. It's the same things that I brought into my teams, but I wanted to see that off the court more. I have a presence and a call to my family that I can't do if I'm overseas. There's a time and a place for different things, and the things I was able to give financially to different organizations or my family or different things was wonderful. But there's other things God has called me to give to that require me to be present. And the emotional and mental battle that fighting for someone wrongfully incarcerated in the United States takes is massive. And so I took some time to shift my energy into that same, this is hard, I want to do that. I mean, it's not as exciting,
right?
But this is hard. Oh, we need to heal this.
Yeah.
One day at a time, whatever it looks like. And so whether it was me, like learning a slower pace so I can attune to myself and be well so that I can be present in this battle. Because I had to get myself a little more healthy before I could, I think, move stronger in the advocacy lane.
Yeah.
To be able to have the mental and emotional energy to use my voice well for him with the platform that I have.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, the subtitle being, kind of these two different courts, this idea, right? The court system, the criminal justice system, and the courts that Johnathan is, struggling with, and then the basketball court. And in some way, both of them have a tendency to try to strip you of your humanity. Like both of them you can either be driven to be an automaton, and oftentimes fans just see you as you're supposed to keep going and keep doing this thing for me. And in the same time, struggling to get the courts of the United States to see Johnathan as a human, and see him as so. And that was something in your book that was that really stands out. This outrage that you get of seeing this what I can only call or consider misconduct, and especially as someone who didn't grow up, in that environment of being aware of these systems and how the court system worked. Tell us a little bit about how that fueled your focus to challenge and, this injustice because you were seeing it, not just something that happened in 1997 that there was a case of mistaken identity, but something you were continuing to see, happen.
Man, that's the hard work. Mm-hmm. That's the hard work of actually being like Jesus and coming down and coming into the mess. Incarnate. It's super deep. That's how I knew I was going to keep going and I had to do this. I was like, I'm more like Jesus than I've ever been in my life. While at the same time receiving the benefit of all the light of Johnathan and my family and other people trying to help me learn. And I wasn't just this I'm going to be Jesus in this picture. Sure, we're all helping each other. Yeah. But I'm getting a chance to relate to the Gospels and relate to some of these things I'm seeing in Scripture because, I need this. Because I am seeing the oppression. Oh God, where are you? It's very real. But I felt more human. I felt more on purpose. I felt more like this is why I'm alive, to be in this moment. I felt very Esther, right? For such a time as this. Yeah. When you move in the Spirit and like Jesus, He's with you. And then you get this confidence of I don't know how this is going to end up, but this is what I'm supposed to be doing because He's right here and I can see His eyes and I'm going to keep looking where He's looking. And this is right. This is how we are supposed to treat each other. And so I don't know what's going to happen necessarily, what's next to do, but I know He's going to provide, He's going to show. And every season, every year, we get heartbreak, but then He'd show us something. And then hold on, nothing's happening, and then something, and then He would just keep us going. He'd show Himself really undeniably in different ways where it was we're on the right track. And it was long.
I'll just ask you this one quick one because, there is so much and the book covers so much, but the one moment where I can feel your righteous indignation is when this delay happens where you think he's one hearing away from coming home in December 2020 and it gets inexplicably pushed back and you kind of have a moment.
I had many moments.
Right. Tell us about
journey,
that.
But that was a moment. So again, just when you step into it and you are seeing it, it's not just something you're reading about. It's, do the research, read about it, educate yourself. But there really is something to when you know the person or the person who knows the person. There's some sort of connection to at the end of the day, this is about people. This is about image bearers and how we are living together. And so I'm getting all this education. I'm studying. I'm growing in my faith. I'm getting a hold of just more teaching and learning that makes more sense of how God's heart is about justice and mercy and dignity and caring for the vulnerable. So I'm being saturated with learning more of this is what the kingdom of God looks like at its purest. And you look at Johnathan's situation, you're like, how are the leaders of our justice system the ones perverting it? Not only is it just perverted systems going on, but these are the leaders. How are the leaders the ones sabotaging the system? And so that just, as a leader, I'm like, that's not what you do. If I was to even think about sabotaging one of our freshmen, no, don't. That's not what we do. Right. That's not what leads to winning in life and fun and joy. And so I just have all these experiences of people doing things well as leaders. And then I see the most important role of leaders of the justice system doing things that are just unthinkable. For what? It's that was the bang your head against the wall as we were doing this. Why? Why? What does this give you? Why does this make you feel good at night to go to bed knowing it's really, really, it's disgusting. And so that mental and emotional and spiritual energy to keep going through the disgust. Yeah. And then thank God we had a judge you know, who wanted to do the right thing, but he also had to kind of play the game of like making sure the right thing would stick, which is why some of the delays had to happen on top of the state of Missouri doing everything they could to slow the process down of justice. And so that was really hard for me to see them find loopholes in the law or just make stuff up that just to delay the process, to muddy the waters when the facts were right there.
Wow.
And then Johnathan helps me learn, like, there's laws that have been put in place for one reason or another that don't let prosecutors have to be accountable for fabricating evidence.
Absolute immunity.
Absolute immunity is a thing. And it's like, okay, we got some work to do.
Right. And speaking of that work, you talk about wanting to change the incentive structures so that people don't see winning as, by all possible means, sending a person, into prison for as long as possible, but to win, to redefine what winning is. Tell us about Win with Justice and how you're trying to redefine what winning is.
Yeah. So through the inspiration of Johnathan and help from the agency that represents us, they helped me start a nonprofit called Win with Justice. I was given some encouragement from Mike De La Rocha and Athletes for Impact crew to say, hey, this beast we're battling is wide and long. So I would encourage you to find a lane as you're trying to fight and correct our justice system. Find a lane and run in it. And when it comes to prosecutors, they are so powerful and influential. I had no idea what a prosecutor was. I had won gold medals, but I didn't know what a prosecutor was. It's just my life as an athlete. Like I knew some things, but I just wasn't in touch with local politics and like justice system. But through Jonathan's case, I started to learn what a prosecutor was and how important their role is. And so Win with Justice focuses on prosecutorial reform and changing the culture of prosecutors' offices because it's a hard job. You know, prosecutors have a lot on their shoulders, but they also have a huge responsibility to make sure justice is always at the heart of it, humanizing and not just about looking right or appearing to get the win or just trying to get as many convictions as possible. Because we've seen that and we know it's real. And, no matter what people try to say to push back, it's like at the end of the day, there are real people being harmed by prosecutorial misconduct.
The story, of course, ends as only stories with your name attached to it do, with a win. After, just 23 years of the fight for him. And you see in 2020, this iconic moment. Yeah, I remember reading about it, of him walking out in prison, seeing you in worship, you know what I mean? Praising God for it. And tell us what that moment was like. And then the interesting twist that the world was about to, see
I know.
Of what was going to happen next.
The story. Sometimes we're like, is this our story? How is this our life?
Right.
It is just so unbelievable.
Yeah.
The depths and the layers and, the beauty that God has brought out of it. But we finally get to a place where there's no other way for the state of Missouri to delay Jonathan's release. And the Supreme Court of Missouri finally gave a ruling saying, stop it, let this man out. It was around 5 o'clock, sometime in the evening. Got to walk out of those doors. We made sure, we had been planning and prepping, and I made sure that he had some nice Jordan gear to wear so he could walk out dignified like the human being that he is. So he walked out of those doors with nice clothes on, arms up high, a mask on that said hope because COVID had broken out while he was waiting to be freed. And he hugged Reggie. He hugged Papa. I fell to my knees. It was almost like the weight was lifted and also just like, praise you, God. And I hugged him and Sherry hugged him. And it was just, it's like a little glimpse of Jesus cracking the sky and all is going to be made right. Like, this is like the goodness of God and the goodness of the story is what's going to win.
Wow.
Like, this is real life.
Mm.
Like, it's possible. Like, it happens. We had been developing a friendship that turned into more than a friendship, that turned into like, all right, what do we do with this more than friendship aspect of our life while we're where we are. And we stuck with it and just loved each other as best as we could from our situations. And finally, when he was freed, it was like, okay, we're getting married. We're going to start, like, I know this is a lot, but let's just move forward married so we can just kind of figure this thing out together. And so we got married a few days later. And being married is a lot. Like, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, so much that you learn about yourself and struggles, and like being married, like trying to do that, but also trying to heal, right? Like all the trauma Johnathan's been through, things I've been through, things we've been through together, you know, and trying to prioritize like counseling and healing and then starting your, you know, his new life with freedom. That's a whole dynamic, right? So we protected our relationship that way. And yeah, but people were so excited. They just thought it was beautiful. And they knew it was genuine because we had been in this thing for over a decade.
Wow.
So.
Well, the thing I also love about your story is that you always, even just at the very end, continue to bring up the community, the people around you, the support that you have, that have nurtured you, that have guided you, and that you really represent. And I just want to thank you so much for showing us that example. Well, thanks so much for sharing your story, and thank you for watching and listening to Where You're From. And remember, you can check out the book Love and Justice wherever you get your books, audio, paperback, digital. Get this book. It will inspire you. It will encourage you, and it will give you practical steps about how to be about this work of criminal justice reform and be in the hands and feet of Jesus. And remember, with Where You're From, it's not just about where you're at, it's also about where you're from.